Hello, my name is Rain and welcome to my channel where I discuss fantasy Formula 1. The Dutch Grand Prix ended and me and many others, both in this community and beyond, are absolutely devastated. There's a lot of things to talk about. This video is not going to be as fun as some of the other ones. I am not in the best of mood after that. Super happy for Lando, devastated for my fantasy team. Let's get talking about it. So I've come away from Zandvoort with 188 points. But oh, what could have been. So I ended up transferring out Lando Norris, Nico Hülkenberg, and Ferrari to bring McLaren, Alex Albon, and Lewis Hamilton in. And now that may seem crazy at first, but the thought process was actually pretty simple. During the deadline stream, which you can go back and watch, it's on my channel, you can see the entire thought process sort of pan out if that's what you want to hear. I needed to get McLaren in, and that was a good move. Let's just get that out of the way. Getting Ferrari out from McLaren was a good move. Now, Mercedes had a howler, so Ferrari was actually better than Mercedes. Somehow, I don't know where Ferrari got the pace from. I'm happy as a Ferrari supporter, not happy as a fantasy owner, but, you know, I was never going to transfer Mercedes out. It was always going to be Ferrari. So I don't mind that, you know, Ferrari outscored Mercedes by 20 points. McLaren outscored Ferrari by a solid, 22 points. So it's an improvement. And I wanted to make that change. I wanted to switch Ferrari to McLaren. I needed money in the bank to do so. So I had two options to do that. But I'll get to that in a second. The second thing I did was to transfer out Nico Hülkenberg for Alex Albon. Now I ended up keeping Logan Sargent. And I'll explain later why I'm happy I did that. But there were a lot of doubts about Logan Sargent because he wouldn't start in the qualifying. And we didn't know if, you know, Williams even had enough things for him to drive on Sunday. And then we were unsure about Hülkenberg because Hulk's brakes had been wrong. They'd been bad the entire weekend. And it was sort of smelling like a technical failure, right? So we were scared over both Sargent and Hülkenberg, two drivers which I had in my team. And if I wanted to get McLaren, the constructor, in, I could only get rid of one of them. Now, I ended up choosing Hülkenberg because I wanted to keep Logan Sargent, because if I sold Logan Sargent, I needed to change a lot of things about my team, and then I would want to get Logan Sargent back in later. The reason why is because he's so cheap that he allows me to afford other better things. And I'd rather have Logan Sargent than Show or Bottas, which, by the way, that I feel like that's not even controversial to say anymore. That Sauber is unbelievably bad. We've been talking about Formula A and Formula B this entire season. You know, Formula A being the top four teams, and then there's a gap to the rest of the teams. There's now a Formula C, and that's Sauber all by themselves. The gap between 8th and 9th was less than the gap between 18th and 19th. That's how bad Sauber are. So I feel like the Saubers are just a complete no-go. You just go for Logan Sargent and Alex Albon and call it a day, and you just avoid the Saubers. It's not worth having them at all. So I wanted to keep Logan Sargent because I knew I would want to get him back later anyway. So I said, I'm just going to take the -5. He ended up with 0 points. I feel like that's a positive. I'm never going to sell him at this point. My budget is so bad that I can't be the one to go for luxury moves, such as a better C-tier asset. I'm just going to stick Logan Sargent in there for the rest of the season. And it looks like he might get, swapped for Mick Schumacher. We've heard rumors about it. I don't know how true they are, but apparently James Vowles is running out of patience with Logan Sargent, so Logan Sargent might be out of the car completely. And if he is, we'll see what happens then. But for now, I'm just happy to have Logan Sargent in there, so I didn't want to get rid of Logan Sargent. So I ended up getting rid of Hülkenberg for Alex Albon, a simple downgrade, and then Alex Albon got disqualified in quali, getting -15 points. So even his 8 race overtakes and 5 positions gained was not enough to get him a positive score. Now, if he had not been disqualified from quali, he would have had 3 points from qualifying 8th. I don't know how much points he would have gone from this. I don't think we can just sit here and say that he would have been on a 20-point haul at a +1 million. But I do think he would have increased in price. I think he would have probably, after, you know, pitting and he would have gone down a position or two. The Williams wasn't as fast as expected. It was not bad, but he maybe would have ended 10th. That's -2 that's 1, and then some overtakes. He maybe would have ended on like 6 or 7 points. I feel it's relatively reasonable, and that would have been enough for an increase in price. So that's just massively unlucky. Again, getting, you know, essentially weekend ruin for this. And then the Lando Norris decision. Okay, so I had an option with Hulkenberg down to Albon and with Ferrari up to McLaren, I had two options. I could either go for Lando Norris plus George Russell or Oscar Piastri plus Lewis Hamilton. Those were the options. And hindsight merchants will say, how could you sell Lando Norris? He looked likely to win that race. But Oscar Piastri had also been good in practice. Granted, not as good, but still close. And we've seen Lando be really good in practice and then just not deliver in the race. And again, he lost the lead into turn 1. He has just lost the lead every time he's been on pole position. So even after qualifying, I was fine with Piastri being third. Piastri has shown better race pace lately than he did earlier in the season and last year. So before the race, a lot of people are saying, well, you know, why have Lando when you can have Piastri? Piastri's a B-tier asset and he is as good as Lando and will just as easily win a race as Lando Norris. And I thought that was fair. And that if that meant I could then get Lewis Hamilton in, which I think was a better asset than George Russell, and he ended up being that even though he started from 14th, I felt like that was a win-win, and I was fully aware that it could backfire. You know, if Lando won, he was likely to get driver of the day. I was expecting Piastri to be second, and in that scenario, the points difference wouldn't have been that great. It would have been maybe 20 points. Now that ended up being 40 points. What, Lando got 57, so 37 points, and that's before you double it for the DRS boost. So the little like margin of error that I saw, that I was like, okay, even if Lando wins, I think Lando will win because McLaren are fast. Piastri should be in second. The difference is not going to be monumental. Maybe Lewis Hamilton can make a difference. Worst case, I drop 10, 20 points. No, I ended up dropping what, 60 points more. No, that's not enough. It's 37 plus 37. It's it's unbelievable how big that swing was. And it ended up being that like Alex Albon's and Logan Sargent's negative points didn't even end up mattering. It was just the fact that I transferred out Lando Norris, and I've had Lando Norris since Monaco. Like Monaco, I had Charles Leclerc. After that, I bought. Last time I went a race without Lando Norris was in Monaco. And now he goes and just gets the biggest haul of the season, getting driver today, stealing the fastest lap from Hamilton on the final lap. Are you kidding me? Like, Lewis Hamilton would have been at 31 points. That would have been insane. A massive haul for him starting from 14th. And no, Lando just casually took it on the final lap on 40 lap old tires or something like that. How is that even physically possible? I don't know. I'm slightly upset. My transfers, even though I got McLaren in over Ferrari, has lost me like a net 58 points. And if I'd gone with the correct route, again, this entire season has been me having two really good, really solid options. And then it just ends up being that one of them is astronomically better than the other one. And I've always chosen the wrong thing. It is not my year for F1 Fantasy. I have another red arrow, the biggest one I've had since the Ferrari DNF in Canada. Negative 2,921 down to 18,577. This was not in the script. Yeah, shout out Pierre Gasly though, finally doing something, making up for the fact that he's lost me like 40 points in the past couple races. So I'm not very happy, but the game's the game. There are discussions to be had, like, you know, the Lando switch is just so unbelievably unlucky, and hindsight's merchants will say, why did you sell Lando? He looked likely to win. But again, even if he won, I didn't think it would be that big. Like, how did he get the fastest lap? Driver of the day makes sense, but and then Oscar Piastri only being fourth behind Charles Leclerc. Very happy as a Leclerc fan, and then you have the mixed emotion with the fantasy in there. Yikes. Let's go to so both Alex Albon and Logan starting to decrease 0.2 million. I don't think I'm doing anything about that. I think I'm sticking with both of them for a while. I can't really do anything else. Pierre Gasly increasing 0.5. I'm probably selling him next week to if I'm realistic. Maybe getting Hulkenberg back in. Hulkenberg increasing 0.5, by the way. Thank you, Alex Albon. But this is where I'm at with the team. I'm not super happy. As you can tell, we're going to discuss what I want to do for Monza. But first, a quick little discussion about, I guess, the game as a whole. So let's do this from the Alex Albon screen, right? So we have a negative 15 here, and this is kind of what I want to quickly mention. And I've seen some talk on Twitter about it, and I feel that if I definitely feel the same way. you feel very hard done by fantasy sometimes because the negatives are so high in specifically F1 fantasy. What do I mean by that? Well, imagine if this was like a -5. This would have been an 8-point haul for Albon, an increase in price, and I would have been very happy. Like, he got 13 points in the race, but it couldn't make up for this. So the negatives in F1 Fantasy currently, I feel personally, are too high. Now, you might just say skill issue, and that could be the case. And I know we just talked about Lando's massive difference in the positive points, but that's an anomaly. I think Max Verstappen got a 50+ point haul. Like that amount of points usually don't happen in a single race weekend. It's only happened once before the season that a driver got that high of a score. It feels like no matter what you do, it doesn't really matter because all you have to do is avoid the negatives because the negatives are so big. Same goes for the Haas double DQ, double disqualification, double DNF in Monaco. There were people sitting on Magnussen and Hulkenberg. Those negative swings hit so much harder than 95% of the positive swings. Yes, if you had Lando Norris, you had a massive upswing, but most people won't have that. And you're sitting there with, I know a lot of people have Lando, but like you're sitting there watching your team and you're getting points, which is good, but then you have one DNF and your entire weekend is ruined. I remember from 2 or 3 years back in F1 Fantasy, the amount of negatives you could get from positions lost was only 10, I believe. And in that case, where the negative positions is sort of limited to -10, and you change DNF to -10 points, I feel like that would be better for the game. You might say, well, you should be penalized for a DNF, and I agree, you should be penalized. But I think you should be penalized for other things too. I think you should be penalized for getting a grid penalty or getting a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. I think things like that should give you negative points. -1, -2, minor things. The problem is that these negative scores that we have in this game are so astronomical that they end up being what matters. They end up being what matters. Yeah, you can say that, right? So the -15 for Alex Albon, I think the -5 for not starting in quali is fine. But I think disqualification in qualifying should be at most 10 points negative. But realistically, more like -7. Disqualification from the race, 12. DNF in the race, -10. The maximum you can get from positions lost, -10. And then just add every like penalty you get, that's a second penalty or a grid penalty, is -1. And I feel like the game would be much better for it because then it ends up being like the upsides ends up being what matters. And you can predict the upsides, you really cannot predict the downsides. You cannot predict that Alex Albon's floor is cheatsy and that he gets disqualified. I'm not saying he shouldn't be disqualified. I mean, Williams were in the wrong. The disqualification was definitely justified. But in terms of the fantasy game, you cannot predict this. You cannot predict the Haas double disqualification in Monaco. You cannot predict DNFs. You can kind of avoid it by saying, oh, I'm not going to pick Logan Sargent. But you cannot really predict it. You can be risk averse. And all this to say is we can predict who is fast. You can look at data, you can say, I think this person, I think this driver, I think this team is going to be fast in this race. And that's where the skill lies in this game, because this game is a lot of luck as well. But when those moments of skill, moments of data analysis gets ruined by random moments like this, like Haas in Monaco, it's rough. All right, it's rough. It hurts your it hurts your soul, your ego, your mood. I was fuming after the qualification because I was so happy about my Albon transfer. It went so well. It was exactly like I planned it. I saw that Williams were strong. Albon had been strong all weekend, and then this happened, and I'm no longer happy about the transfer, and is a net negative for me again. So I feel like the negatives are too big because they impact how much the upsides actually matter to any assets, not just C tiers, but A tiers as well. So I think it should be changed for next year. If I were the one to decide, I would probably put a qualifying DQ at 7 points and a race DQ at 12, a DNF in the race -10, DNF in the, or did not set a time, still -5. I think that's a valid one. But basically half what it is now for most things, and then just add a negative for penalties, because I feel like if you're Lewis Hamilton, I mean, yes, you're super happy about -20, but 21 points from 14th. He could have been on 31 points. And I feel like that's kind of off when he finishes in 8th position, starting from P14, because he got a 3-place grid penalty. Like, I'm sitting there giddy and excited that Hamilton has a 3-place grid penalty. That feels weird. I feel like that shouldn't be in the spirit of the game, if that makes sense. So I think you should get penalized in fantasy if you have a penalty in the actual race weekend. I feel like that makes sense. So I'm not saying that I don't want negative scores. I think negative scores are part of the game and they have to be there. But I feel like they're too big compared to the upside of a lot of assets. So that's my quick little rant on that. Let me know in the comments if you agree and if you think my point system of -5 for, -5, -10, -12, -5, -7, -10, -12 is fair. And adding on -1s or -2s for penalties. I feel like that would put the game in a better spot. And, let's just look forward to what I'm likely to do in Monza. So at least one good thing with the transfers I ended up making is that at least Hamilton and Piastri are B-tier assets. So they both increased 0.3 million. What that means is that I could easily get Lando Norris and George Russell in. You can't see them, but they increased 0.1 for Russell and 0.2 for Lando. This means that if I want to get Lando back in, it is a very, very quick and easy switch. 1.6 million in the bank. Bang, boom, done. I have 2 free transfers. It's a very, very easy switch. So that is possible. I could just right the wrongs of last weekend. I take the negative 50 plus points. Granted, I said I lost 70 plus points on that, 74 points. But Russell, lost out by 8 points to Hamilton. So it's a 66 point swing only. I can just right the wrongs of that 66 point negative swing, pick Lando and Russell, and call it a day. Those are my 2 transfers. Bing, bang, boom. Now, McLaren look really, 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 really good. They brought another upgrade, and it looks, it wasn't even close. I'm surprised Piastri was 4th, but it looks like there's something with the clean air. Piastri was not able to keep the same pace as Lando. Perhaps it's just down to his race pace, or racecraft rather, but it kind of appeared to be the clean air, and that's sort of what the McLaren team was trying to do with Piastri as well when they allowed Leclerc to undercut. They were like, just go now. We do plan A +5 is what they said, which means that they go 5 extra laps, but they stick to plan A, which essentially allowed Piastri some clean air to go faster so that the undercut wouldn't be as drastic, or at least that he would have much better tires later in the race to be able to overtake Leclerc. Now he wasn't able to overtake Leclerc because Leclerc's and Ferrari's strategy ended up being pretty perfect. You saw on Hulkenberg, who was up in P9 for a while. So I'm actually pretty happy that Hulkenberg didn't get even more points. I would have been distraught if Hulkenberg ended on a 13, 14 pointer, which was definitely possible if he ended in P9, which it looked like for a while. But once he got to lap 47 or something on those hards, it was around lap 40 on those hard tires that Hulkenberg really fell off. And Leclerc ended with 39 or 40 lap old tires. So the Ferrari strategy ended up being perfect, and those tires did not degrade enough for Piastri to be able to overtake with his fresher tires. But there's something to be said with that McLaren and clean air, and also that McLaren, once the car gets lighter, they always look slower early in the race, and then as soon as once the fuel starts going down and the deg starts getting higher on other cars, whereas Max is struggling to even turn the car, Lando's just flying off into the distance, setting fastest laps at the end. So there's something to be said about the triple McLaren. And if you're on a higher budget than me, which I know a lot of you are, I don't think it's entirely unreasonable. I'm just going to remove Gasly for a while so I can show you. Piastri's at 23.9 million. which means that I can afford this with this. Now, I don't enjoy having Bottas in here, but if you're, not like me and you have an extra, 1.3 million in the bank, you could get Nico Hülkenberg in here into this team, and I feel like this looks perfect. I'm gonna be honest, this looks perfect. Now, you might argue that Ferrari is better than Mercedes now. I don't know. I think that's gonna change from race to race. But if you're on a 123 million type cost cap, I feel like you can pretty much fit in the perfect team now, which is triple McLaren, either Ferrari or Mercedes, whichever one, probably Mercedes if you're slightly poorer. And then you just go cheap C tiers and avoid the Saubers, right? So you have Logan Sargent, Alex Albon, and then ideally here you would fit in Nico Hülkenberg. I can fit in Nico Hülkenberg and Zhou Guanyu. Again, this would obviously need more transfers, but right now when I have Alex Albon in, it's Bottas. Now there's something to be said. Do I go for Bottas or Zhou Guanyu here? If I do end up going for the triple McLaren, right? Because currently, if you remember, my team is Lewis Hamilton plus Pierre Gasly. So the two transfers I could make could be this. Get Lando in for Lewis Hamilton, and then here I can choose one of the kick boys. Now, I don't want either of them, let me be clear. But there's something to be said with picking the cheaper one. Even though I think Bottas is better, and Bottas is better, I think both of them are almost equally bad. Like, the difference is 3 points, right? Zhou Guanyu was -2, Bottas was +1. And if I go for Zhou Guanyu here, I can then later on sell Alex Albon for Nico Hülkenberg in the future, should Alex increase in price. So there's something to be said for picking Zhou Guanyu, where it makes it so that I don't need an extra transfer later. But considering I get 2 transfers every week, I feel like I just might go for the Bottas and keep it like this. So for Monza, again, we need to wait for free practice 1 and free practice 2 and free practice 3. And I say this every time because remember my team selection video that I posted on Friday? Everything I said in that video was thrown out the window as soon as we saw that, Nico Hülkenberg's brakes weren't working and Logan Sargent crashed in FP3. Don't make your transfers yet. There's no dynamic price rises in F1 Fantasy. There are in FPL if you're playing that. There's no dynamic price rises. The prices you see on screen, those are the prices that's going to be there come the end of the deadline. You never make transfers early in this game. You wait until after FP3 every single time. You need to, set an alarm 30 minutes before quali starts and make your F1 moves then. This could be my option to just switch to Bottas for Gasly and or Gasly out for Bottas and then get Norris back in to do a triple. If McLaren looks strong in Monza, I'm expecting McLaren to be dominant now. It doesn't look like Red Bull have any upgrades to come with that's going to challenge McLaren. Leclerc's face in the cooldown room when he learned how far ahead Lando was of Max was that of utter shock and disbelief. Fernando Alonso is playing Inspector Seb, laying down on the tarmac, trying to get a peek at McLaren's floor. The McLaren's fast. I think the McLaren is going to be the dominant car for the rest of the season. They seem to be the big winners from the upgrade package that the teams brought after the summer break. So right now, the plan is probably to just do this and say, I don't care about the features anymore, just give me the McLaren points. This would obviously be DRS boost on Lando Norris, by the way. I should say that quickly. If you have Lando or Max, by the way, I don't think Max is an option anymore. You should have Lando instead. If you have Lando Norris in there, you put the DRS boost on him. There's no reason to have an A-tier asset in there if you're not DRS boosting him. You can be cutesy and put the DRS boost on Piastri, but I feel like you're just throwing at that point. So yeah. Granted, this could obviously change. We could get to Friday or Saturday, and Logan Sargent could be out of the car with Mick Schumacher in at a different price, so I'd have to sell Logan Sargent. I don't know. I mean, honestly, Logan Sargent at that price point, 0 points every week. I'll honestly take it. No risk for Mick Schumacher crashing in the wall. I'd maybe you have to make a transfer to transfer Logan out. I think that's how it works. So you can't actually make another transfer. But if I can do this and then just keep Logan for the rest of the season, I'm probably happy. So at this point, this is likely what I'm going with. But it could also be keeping Pierre Gasly in there and getting Russell over Piastri. Any of these combinations are very possible. We'll see what happens in Monza. I should mention that like here there is an opportunity to add Ferrari, but then again I only have 2 transfers. So if Ferrari looks strong in Monza better than Mercedes, I'm still not going to buy them. I'm gonna stick with Mercedes. I don't think a 10-point hit is worth it to get them in. So that's my quick Ferrari chat. And again, their drivers. Yes, you want Lando Norris because he looks like he's going to win every race. But do you want to get Leclerc when you can just get Piastri? Not really. Do you want to get Carlos Sainz over, Russell, who's 2 million cheaper? Probably not. So even though Ferrari looked better than Mercedes in that race specifically, just because of the price points, I don't even think it's worth it to attempt it at the moment. So that's about does it. If you didn't watch the team selection video I posted on Friday, there's a mid-section of that video which is all about the chips for the rest of the season. You should definitely go and watch that. I think that's important to keep in mind, right? There's 9 races left, and if you have 5 or so chips remaining, you need to start using them because you can only use 1 chip per race. So keep that in mind going forward. I only have 3 chips remaining, so I don't have to rush them out as much, and I have a solid plan for them. But I might post a separate video with just that conversation from Friday's video because I think it was a good one. I'm doing another deadline stream on Saturday, so don't miss it, where we can all sit, chat, and discuss what to do, only to inevitably it being ruined by something that's out of our control. So if you want to join me and make the wrong choices together, you can do so right here on this channel 2 hours before qualifying. So that's at 2 p.m. Central Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. Look forward to the team selection video probably on Friday after free practice. If you haven't subscribed already, why are you still here? No, that came out wrong. Just subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And follow me on Twitter. Join the Discord where you can chat with me and ask me questions and hear me chat about other stuff as well. I do a lot of FPL chats on Discord and on Twitter. So if you're interested in that, follow me there. I'll see you in the next video. Probably Friday. Maybe sooner. We'll see. I'll probably make a video if Logan gets kicked. Do you think Logan Sargent gets kicked? If you're still here, does Logan Sargent get the boot? Will Mick Schumacher drive in Monza? Let me know down below.